Okay, so let's look at 37 now. You'll notice that this one is an x to the fourth power. Okay, so we've only done up to a cubic. But now we're going to use an x to the fourth. And here we are factoring. Yep, we are still factoring. Factor completely. Okay, but this time they give us two factors to get started with. So we have the x minus 3 and the x plus 3. Okay, so if I'm going to do synthetic division on this one, I want to put my factor equal to 0. So x minus 3 equals 0, solve it, and I get 3. Okay, so that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with a 3, put that in my box. Look at your coefficients. We have a 1 x to the fourth. Okay, also notice we are missing a cubic term. So we need a 0 for that cubic, negative 14 for my quadratic term. And this one, we're also missing a linear. We don't have an x, so I need a 0 for that placeholder. And then 45 is my constant. Okay, so do my synthetic division. Bring down my 1. I'm going to multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add, last time, and we get 0. Okay, so this is good. We want that 0. Okay, so what I started with was coefficients for a quartic. Now that I have divided, I have divided by a linear term, I now am down to a cubic. Okay, so x cubed. All right, now this is important. So please, 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 please listen very carefully. I started with a quartic. I used one of my factors. I'm down to a cubic. Now, we did factor some cubics by using a box. However, that's not a guaranteed method. Okay, sometimes the box works when you factor with 4 terms, sometimes it doesn't work. All right, so since I'm given another term, I'm going to play it safe, and I'm going to use my other factor, x plus 3 equals 0, solve it, x is a negative 3, and I'm going to use negative 3 and do my synthetic division again. Now notice, okay, notice, very, 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 very important. I did not start over with the original coefficients. Okay, I'm piggybacking off of the new set of coefficients I got that represent the cubic. So I'm going to bring my 1 down. I'm going to multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. Okay, so again, I get a 0. That is a very good thing. Okay, but now, okay, so I had a cubic, and now since I've divided again, I'm down to a quadratic. Okay, so this right here, this 1, 0, negative 5, this says 1x squared plus 0x minus 5. Okay, now remember, what is it we're supposed to be doing? We are supposed to be completely factoring. Okay, so the question becomes, can I factor x squared minus 5? Well, if I do my product sum table, multiply to get negative 5, add to get 0, you're limited. You only have a couple of options here. 5 and negative 1 or negative 5 and positive 1. That's the only thing that's going to multiply to give you a negative 5. Neither one of them adds to be 0. So factoring is out. So what that means is this quadratic is not factorable. Okay, now, however, I was able to factor this equation, this quartic. Okay, so my final answer is I factored using an x minus 3, an x plus 3, And then that took me down to this x squared minus 5. Now, x squared minus 5 isn't factorable. Okay, so that's going to stay as is. But using the other factors that I was given, I now have the factored version of that quartic. Okay, so if you look at your x's, you have an x minus 3 and x plus 3. So that x times x is going to give you an x squared. And then multiply that times another x squared gives you that x to the 4th. Okay. 38. We can run through this one really quick. Find all zeros if f of 2 is 0. Okay, so remember finding zeros is finding your solutions, and we are given one of those zeros. So 2 is going to go in my box. I'm going to use my coefficients. 1, 2, -4, -8. So bring down my 1, use my synthetic division, do my multiplication and my addition. I get a remainder of 0, so that's good. Okay, we started with a cubic. I divided using that 0 that I was given. I am now down to a quadratic. Okay, so since I'm down to a quadratic, x squared plus 4x plus 4. Okay, now remember, what is my, I'm finding all zeros. Okay, so I'm finding the zeros. Well, I need to solve this quadratic then. You have options. Remember, factor, square roots, complete the square, quadratic formula. On this one, square roots is not a good idea. So I'm going to see if I can get this to factor. So multiply to be 4, add to be 4, 2, and 2. So this will factor x plus 2, x plus 2. Remember, finding all zeros, so I'm solving. So if I'm solving, then x plus 2 equals 0. And here, x plus 2 equals 0. So I end up with two zeros that are the same. They're -2. They're both -2. So my zeros, what are my zeros? Well, the one I was given was a +2. And then I have a -2 and another -2. You do not need to write it twice. If you want to, you can say, hey, that's a double root. So I have the first 0 is 2, and then I've got 2 of the -2's. So put that together, that is 3 zeros in total, which is what we should have because this was a cubic to start with. Okay, so find all zeros. Well, if it's a cubic, that means you're looking for 3 zeros. All right, 39. Here's another quartic. Okay, so this one's going to have, we're finding zeros again. So you want a total of 4 zeros. That's what you've got to come up with, 4 zeros. Okay, now we are given a couple of them to get us started. We have -1 is a 0, and we have 4 is a 0. Okay, I'm just going to start with the -1. Does not matter which you start with. You can do 4 first if you'd rather. Okay, so my coefficients, 1, 0, I'm missing the cubed. I don't have an x cubed term, so that's a 0 for a placeholder. -10 for my quadratic, -21, and then -12. So I'm going to bring down the 1, I'm going to multiply, add, and so on. Okay, and I got 0 for my remainder. Okay, I started with a 4th power. I divided. I'm now down to a 3rd power. Now, this one, same thing we did a minute ago. This is a cubic, but I was given another 0. I was given that 4 is a 0. So I'm going to use that. Again, do not go back to the beginning. Use your latest row of coefficients. to get you down to the next level. Okay, so now I am bumped down to a quadratic. So if this is a quadratic, this says x squared plus 3x plus 3. Okay, now again, what is it I'm looking for? On this one, find all the zeros. Okay, so that means I need to solve this. If I'm going to find the zeros, I got to solve this. Okay, quadratic. So first thing, probably most likely you're thinking product sum table. Multiply to be 3, add to be 3, and that won't work. Okay, it is not going to work. So I can't factor it, but I still need to solve it. So I need another option. Okay, using square roots is not a good idea on this one because you have this linear term, so that's out. Completing the square is going to be really yucky. Okay, so your best option is to go to quadratic formula. Okay, so opposite of b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's look at this cubic. And let's talk about what A, B, and C are. So A is 1, B is 3, and C also happens to be 3. Okay, so I'm going to go opposite of B, so it's going to be a negative 3 plus or minus square root B squared. So 3 squared minus 4. A is 1, C is 3, all over 2 times 1. Okay, so I have negative 3 plus or minus. Oops, not sure what happened there. Okay, plus or minus square root 9 minus 12 all over 2. So negative 3 plus or minus square root negative 3 over 2. All right, we're square rooting a negative value. So square root of a negative, that is an I. That is imaginary. Okay, so those are our last two zeros. Okay, so let's put it all together. So I'm looking for the zeros. It was a quartic. I should have 4 zeros. Okay, so my zeros are negative 1 and 4. Those were the two that you were given for free. And then once I use those, we solved negative 3 plus or minus I root 3 all over 2. Okay, so there's your zeros. Okay, so that wraps up this second part of the lesson for today. And I will see you next